Misfits, before we jump into today's episode, I want to share something very special with you. After hosting over 450 episodes of the Misfit Entrepreneur and sitting down with some of the world's top founders, investors, and high performers, I started to notice something. Different industries, different backgrounds, different paths, but the same patterns kept showing up. So I distilled those patterns into a short, powerful guide called The Misfit Code: 21 Uncomfortable Truths from 450 plus Entrepreneurs. This isn't motivational fluff, it's not theory, and it's definitely not the recycled advice that you hear everywhere else. In fact, it's a fast-paced, practical playbook that you can read in one sitting and then apply immediately to help you execute better, raise your standards, break through to your next level. And if you know you're capable of more, or you feel like you've outgrown where you are, or if you're tired of knowing what to do but not executing consistently, this guide was created for you. You can download it for free right now by going to misfitentrepreneur.com/truths. That's misfitentrepreneur.com/truths. Grab the guide, read it in one sitting, and then come back and work through one misfit truth per day. All right, with that said, let's jump into today's episode. Hello, Misfit Entrepreneurs. Welcome to another solo episode with me, your host, Dave Lukas. I want you to think about something. For nearly all of recorded history, 5,000 years, the life of an ordinary human being barely changed. Think about that. A farmer in ancient Rome and a farmer in England, 4,000 years difference, right? Plowed with roughly the same tools. They traveled at the same speed of a horse. They buried the same heartbreaking share of their children and lived almost always under some ruler's heel. For 5,000 years, progress didn't crawl. It basically stood still. And then, about 250 years ago, in one young nation, it exploded. The historian W. Cleon Skousen called it the 5,000-year leap. His observation was this: more progress in human freedom, prosperity, invention, lifespan happened in America's first 2 centuries than in the 5,000 years before them combined. The light bulb, the airplane, the polio vaccine, the moon landing, the computer, the device you're listening or watching me on right now. Today is the 4th of July, and this isn't a politics episode. You get enough of that out there. What I want to do is an entrepreneurs episode because the founders were entrepreneurs, because that leap was not luck. It was not geography. It was a set of principles. And here's what almost nobody connects to it. They're the same principles that build a great company, a great career, and a great life. So let's jump in and talk to them, right? So why did the leap happen here in the United States? The founders did something that had never been done at scale before. They took a set of timeless truths about human nature, most of them ancient, most of them biblical, and for the first time in history, they assembled them into a system. Principles like your rights come from God, not government. Power must be divided because men are not angels. The individual, not the group, is the fundamental unit of moral worth. And here's the part we forget, the part that matters most for you and me as builders, entrepreneurs. Principles are not self-executing, right? The Constitution is just parchment. The Declaration is just ink. They have no power except the power of a people who actually understand them, believe them, and live them. John Adams said our Constitution was made only for a moral and self-governing people and is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. He wasn't making a religious boast. He was stating an engineering fact. The system built on self-government collapses the moment the cells stop governing. Now, you hear that as an entrepreneur because you already know that's true. You have, you can have the best systems in the world, right? The best playbook, the best CRM, the best rules, right? The best org chart. And it is completely worthless parchment if the person running it won't govern themselves or is out of control. Now, I've watched this in my own companies over 20 plus years, and I've watched it for 2 decades in trading and investing in the markets. The strategy is almost never the problem. The self-government, the discipline is the problem. So the founding of this country is really the greatest entrepreneurship case study ever written. A few misfits told it couldn't be done, betting everything on principles over the way it had always been. So let me give you a handful of those principles and how they build you. Principle number one is personal responsibility and the power of choice, right? So the first principle is the one everything else is built on. It's personal responsibility. And here's how you should think about it. Between everything that happens to you and everything you do about it, there's space, there's a gap. And in that space sits a choice, right? The insult lands, the email arrives, the deal falls through, the customer leaves the 1-star review, the market gaps against your position if you're an investor. And then there's that moment, sometimes 5 seconds, sometimes one, where the entire future forks. And it's in that sliver of time, you are the most powerful you'll ever be. And most people sleep straight through it. You cannot always choose what happens to you. You can choose what happens next. The first half of that sentence is why life is hard. The second half is why life is yours. This is the American idea scaled down to one human being. Self-government doesn't start in Washington. It starts in that gap. A free people is just a large number of individuals who each have decided to own the space between stimulus and response instead of outsourcing it to like an algorithm, a mob, a headline, or their own worst impulses. And entrepreneurially, this is the whole game. The founder who takes radical ownership, no excuses, no blaming the economy, the platform, the competition. The founder that does that compounds. The one who lives in grievance, who's always got a reason it's someone else's fault, stays stuck no matter how talented they are. Same market, same tools, different place, they aim their attention, right? That one isn't as successful. And that brings me to the next principle, and that's gratitude over grievance, right? So let me show you two men looking at the exact same life. The facts are identical. Both were born in this country. At this moment in history, each has a body that mostly works, a mind that can understand these words, food that he didn't have to hunt, water he didn't have to carry, and a level of safety and opportunity that every king who ever lived would have traded his own crown to possess. And each has been wronged, passed over, betrayed, disappointed, hurt by people that, should have known better. Same blessings, same wounds, same facts. The first man wakes up and sees what he's owed and hasn't got. That the slights replay before his feet hit the floor in his mind. He scans the day for evidence the world is stacked against him, and he finds it, because a man looking for evidence always finds it. The wrongs are real, but they're all he sees. The second man wakes up and he sees that he's been given and didn't earn, right? The coffee, the roof, the people who stayed. He's got the same wounds as the first man. He doesn't pretend they aren't there, but they sit in a much larger field, and most of that field is full of things that are good. So here's the part that should stop you cold. Nothing about their circumstances differs. The only difference is where they aim their attention and their focus. And that difference, repeated every morning for a few decades, produces two completely different human beings. On the 4th of July, this is the whole ballgame, right? Gratitude isn't a soft greeting card virtue. It's For an entrepreneur, it's a competitive advantage because grievance is expensive. It burns the energy that you need to build, and it blinds you to the opportunity that's right in front of you. The most successful people that I've had on the Misfit Entrepreneur that I've met through life, 400 and, some plus of them are almost universally the most grateful. That's not a coincidence. That's cause and effect. And that brings me to the next principle, which is delayed gratification, right? So here's maybe the quiet and most powerful principle of them all. Almost everything worth having is acquired slowly, and almost everything that destroys you arrives fast. Health, mastery, wealth, trust, character, a marriage, a great company. Every one of them is built the way that coral is built, by deposits too small to see over a span too long to feel. And every counterfeit of them, the high, the binge, the viral moment, the easy dollar, the rage post that feels so good to send, arrives instantly and ultimately bills you later. Now, connect that back to the leap. What made America explode wasn't a get-rich-quick scheme. It was a culture that could wait, that could plant, and build, and defer, and invest. And it is something it might not live to see. The founders signed a declaration knowing they may not survive the war that had started, right? Their lives, their sacred honor, they pledged it all, and many of them gave it. That's delayed gratification at the highest level, and sacrifice, right? That a human being is capable of. And in my 2 decades of building businesses, or 2+ decades of building businesses in the markets, I'll tell you, This is the difference between the people that make it and the people who blow up. The rules are never the hard part. Sitting on your hands is the hard part. That patient, boring, repeated deposit that compounds, right? Water dripping on a rock consistently over and over and over again. That's what does it, right? I've said this before. You guys have heard me say it. We live in this 3-second society now, right? We can't even wait for the microwave to hit zero. And that impatience causes people to miss out on true success. The most radical, most profitable thing you can do as a builder in 2026 is slow down on purpose. That doesn't mean you slow down in like the trajectory of a business, but you slow down in those moments to think, strategize, make sure you're going the right way, and actually reason things through. You don't just react, right? And that brings me to my next principle, and that is E Pluribus Unum, fitting on the 4th of July, right? It's the last one for this little mini solo episode, and it's the one stamped right on the Great Seal of our nation. E Pluribus Unum. What does it mean? Out of many, one. Many backgrounds, many faiths, many opinions, forged into one people. United, not by blood, not by tribe, but by shared principles. When you stop and think about it, that's the most radical idea in all of political history. Every other nation in history organized around sameness, same blood, same soil, same king. America bet on something almost impossible, right? Strangers with nothing in common, but a shared set of ideas could become one people. And it still works the moment that we choose to work it. Here's the entrepreneurial translation, and it's the whole reason great companies exist. A team is E Pluribus Unum. You take people from different backgrounds, different skills, different worldviews, and you forge them into one mission. Not by making them identical, but by aligning them around shared principles and a shared goal. The best cultures I've ever seen are built are the ones with no differences. They're the ones where a lot of very different people row in one direction together on purpose. And on this day, it's worth remembering what we share is so much bigger than what divides us. Strip away the labels and ask people what they actually want: safe neighborhoods, honest work, fairly rewarded, a better life for their kids. And the agreement is overwhelming, right? So while in some cases division is real, but a lot of it's manufactured, because rage is somebody's revenue in today's world. As misfits, our job is to see clearly and build anyway, and not fall to that or succumb to that, because we have a lot more in common with all of us than we do, that we don't have in common. So for me, the couple things I guess my Misfit 3 for this amazing day, 250 years of independence, looks like this. Number one, principles aren't self-executing. The greatest system on earth is just parchment until a self-governing person picks it up and lives it. That's true for a nation and it's true for your business. Own the gap between what happens to you and what you do next. 2, aim your attention. 2 people, identical circumstances I shared earlier, produce 2 completely different lives based only on where they look. Choose gratitude over grievance. Not because it's nice, because it's the fuel that lets you build. And then number 3, play the long game. Everything real is built solely by deposits too small to see. In a 3-second world, patience is actually a superpower. So slow down on purpose. Here's what I'll leave you with, right? I get to do what I do. I get to reach people in over 100 countries, build companies, take risks on crazy ideas, because a few misfits 250 years ago made that leap. And I don't take that for granted. Not today, not any day. If you're listening to this in America, you won the lottery of human history. So act like it, build like it, be worthy of it. If today's principles hit you, here's a next step for you. You can grab my free ebook, The Misfit Code, 21 Uncomfortable Truths from 450 plus world-class entrepreneurs, over at misfitentrepreneur.com. It's free. You can get it there. So many of those truths trace right back to what I'm talking about today. Ownership, patience, gratitude, thinking for yourself and independently. And if you're ready to go from knowing to doing, there's also the Misfit Execution Playbook, which is the step-by-step system for closing that gap between intention and action. And you can get that there on the site too. But lastly, I want to wish you all just an amazing Independence Day. Take a few minutes just to step back and thank your creator for the divine providence that was used to create this incredible nation and what it's been able to do in 250 years. Be grateful, be free, think for yourself, and go unleash your inner misfit. Happy 4th of July, Misfit Entrepreneurs.